Welcome to Distribution Talk with Jason Bader, the show where we dive into the stories, struggles, and solutions from business owners and thought leaders in the wholesale distribution market. Hey friends, Jason here. In this episode, I had the opportunity to catch up with Ian Heller and Jonathan Bein. These guys are from a distribution strategy group, and we really wanted to talk about their upcoming conference. It's Applied AI for Distribution. And this is the second event that they've done. Last year, they did it in Chicago. It's a June event. I really wanted to make it last year. Unfortunately, I had a couple conflicts, but this year I'm all over it. I really am interested. And as you all know, as listeners, AI is something I enjoy talking about. I'm in constant fascination by it. And I really want to understand the nature of it and how it's going to work in distribution. So, what a better place than to go to this conference with all of these folks, really high-level folks talking, about where we might see it eventually in our companies. And then really a lot of what I hope to get out of this is how to translate some of those really high ideas or things that might be kind of feel like they're out there a little bit to how I can apply it to, my privately held distribution clients and to kind of share some ideas. And I think, one of the things that Jonathan threw out was trying to help people move from shock to awe, because I've been in awe of the AI medium, especially when I was introduced to ChatGPT for a long time. But I have to respect that there's still a healthy amount of fear around this adoption. And so again, I think that's really part of the reason I want to be involved with this is moving from that shock or fear to the awe or the inspired. And so what better place to do it, right in my my wheelhouse there, AI for distributors. I mean, that's who I am. So anyway, I hope you enjoy the episode. I really had a great time catching up with these fellas and love to see you at that event if you get the opportunity. This episode is brought to you by Connected Peers, an online peer collaboration platform for distribution professionals. Let's face it, most managers don't have the opportunity to speak with their industry peers about common challenges in their departments. Sure, they might see each other at an annual conference, but that hardly provides any real relationship building or continuity. What if there was a forum to solve challenges with those in your same role? Well, now there is. The concept is simple. Purchasing managers meeting with purchasing managers, training managers meeting with training managers, marketing managers meeting with marketing managers. You get the idea. There are 10 unique role-based communities to choose from. These are monthly, facilitated meetings all via Zoom. Ask questions and receive feedback from people who understand the challenges of your position. Isn't it time that you quit going it alone? To learn more and find your peers, visit us at www.connectedpeers.com. All right. Well, hey, Ian, welcome back to Distribution Talk. And Jonathan, welcome. Great to see you both. Thanks for joining me. I appreciate it.
You're so welcome, but it's actually our honor, Jason. Thanks for having us.
You bet. My pleasure. So, hey, in Distribution Talk, we like to talk a little bit about the history of the person, who you are and really why you got involved with distribution, what kind of drug you in. Maybe you're conscripted. Maybe, you wound up here by accident, just chose the wrong job. And so, Ian, why don't you, if you could, just refresh the audience a little bit about, how you got into this thing?
Well, I was in need of a summer job back in 1983, and I found one at this little tiny town, had this big bus manufacturing plant in rural Colorado. So I unloaded trucks all summer. And then when I needed a fall job or needed a job the next year, I applied at the Granger branch. And because I'd had a job unloading trucks there, I started unloading trucks at Granger. And then 15 years later, I was the VP of marketing there. And I've done that at 3 other publicly held distributors. And along the way, I started a company called Real Results Marketing, where I met up with Jonathan, and we've been friends ever since and colleagues a couple of times now.
Perfect. Thanks. Jonathan, can you expand on yours? If you wouldn't mind, kind of take us on a little journey, how you got involved with distribution in general.
Well, I love the word you use, drug you in. Like maybe there was a drug that got me involved.
It may have, yeah.
So my background, I'm kind of the quantitative guy in the partnership with me and Ian. So he's the qualitative guy, I'm the quantitative guy. He's the word guy, I'm the number guy. He's the concept guy, I'm the whatever. So I had been doing a lot of analytic work based on my background. My training is in computer science. I've managed tech companies. And I met Ian in 2008,
Mm-hmm.
and I was doing a lot of analytic work at that point for tech companies. But what Ian showed me in distribution was even a small distributor has literally tens of thousands of SKUs, probably,
Yeah.
maybe fews of thousands of clients. And so that created a much richer universe for my analytic brain to feast upon. And so I fell in love with distribution immediately. We did a first engagement with a really well run distribution company in the commercial HVAC space. And then since then, I've worked with over 100 distributors, literally from 2 million to 30 billion, mostly
Mm-hmm.
on things that have a quantitative flavor. So even if you think
Yeah,
about something like a value proposition,
for sure.
I take a very quantitative approach to understanding what customers want, what's important to them, what a particular distributor does well. How do we build a story around evidence? Maybe
Mm-hmm.
evidence is a better term than quantitative.
Gotcha.
So
Okay.
I bring a lot of evidence to what I do.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
And just to interject, Jonathan's got a PhD in computer science in AI.
Right.
And so I always say, if you're going to go into business with someone, choose a genius. And I
Mhm.
did.
And that's exactly what I did.
You
Look
stole my
at you
line.
guys.
You stole
Nice.
my line.
Oh man, yeah, I did know that about Jonathan's background, and I was hoping that was going to come out. I appreciate that. So, actually, I'm really curious though about looking at some of these clients that you've worked with, and again looking at that analytical side to develop that value proposition. Could you expand on that just a little bit?
Yeah, I'll give you a way that we think about it, and this is
Okay.
the nub of this. More than the nub of this got going with Ian's ideas, and then I sort of expanded on it and made it quantified. Basically, what we want to look at in crafting a value proposition is what is it that you as a distributor do well, better
Hmm.
than best, perhaps immeasurably best, that customers care about, that competitors are not claiming.
Hmm.
Three things: what you do well, what customers care about, what competitors are not claiming. Now, we rarely get a perfect world of something that you do really well, that your competitors don't do well, that the customers care about. But that's a basic framework of an ideal that we want to move towards. And we've developed quantitative techniques really for each of those things where we can start to tell a story of, well, here's where the white space is, right?
Hmm.
And oh, here's something that your customers care about. You do it pretty well. We want to make it part of the value proposition, but you're going to
Hmm.
need to improve along this axis to really live that value proposition. It
Gotcha.
might mean customer service in some aspect, or actually,
Hmm.
probably more realistically, tech support, something like that,
Sure.
that becomes part of your value proposition. So, yeah, it's this whole idea of, the value proposition seems inherently touchy feely, right brained. If you have an agency do that work, you're going to get something
Hmm.
that has that flavor. This has got a lot more stake to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I prefer the logic of numbers, rather than the emotionally based, feel good. Let's give it a shot, see if it sticks against the wall type of.
I would add one thing to that. I mean, one of the things that we've seen in doing this work is that there are literally, Ian did a search, I did a search, 500,000 or 1 million distributors that have, if you search what you need when you need it in quotes and then put in distribution, you get like a 500,000 or 1 million
Oh yeah.
results. So that appears to be just what distributors do. They get you stuff when you
Right.
need it. So when you're starting to build out a value proposition, what is it that you do that goes beyond what you need when you need it?
Okay, so I'm going to throw a little bit of a curveball at this. Now, you guys have started me down a trail here, and this is where it gets troublesome. So, we spend a lot of time on value propositions. Why should a customer buy from us as a distributor? But I've spent a lot of time recently trying to reframe that and say, why should a candidate come work for us? Because again, again, I'm working with branch managers a lot of the time on this, and especially, they're definitely needing people. They're always complaining they don't have enough qualified candidates, all this stuff. And I said, well, all right, you've been indoctrinated into the value proposition for the customer side. Why should a customer buy from you all? And you're good at that, and you've developed a pretty decent value proposition. I mean, it's still probably a little messy, but then how would we flip that and say, all right, what's the best value proposition to a candidate instead? So how would you, just out of curiosity, how would you all approach that? Because I get that a lot. I get that question tons and tons.
Well, there's another meaning of the acronym EVP or the letters EVP. We usually think executive vice president, which is employee value proposition. So there is something that is emerging as an employee value proposition. And I think one of the things that we've seen through COVID and now is that HR has a different seat at the table than they had prior to COVID.
Interesting. Yeah.
It's usually one of the weaker roles in the distribution VP C-level cohort, right? But it sits at the table in a different way. And you hear any number of companies who have 50, 75, over 100% turnover in their warehouse because they're getting 75 cents or $1.25 more from Amazon, right?
Sure. Absolutely.
I think there's a big understanding. Ian and I were approached by one of the really big associations to put together a whole plan on how do you promote this? How do you make distribution sexy? How do we come up with an employee value proposition? I think there's a similar story, and we've actually built a product that gets at similar kind of quantitative information on the employee side. So one we call customer experience, the other we call employee experience. But it's a similar type of thing. It's like what's important to employees? What is it that you do well, perhaps better than other distributors? Because that's who in this case, other employers, because it's not just distributors that you're in competition with. Right.
Look, I don't think it's that complicated. I mean, I think I agree with what Jonathan talked about, but people are drawn to great leadership and healthy cultures and exciting work environments. And I've never, ever been the slightest apologetic about working in distribution. I think it's a fantastic industry. I've met some companies that are very devoted to their employees versus what I've seen in, financial services or tech sector, et cetera. And, I think I call distribution the Ted Lasso of industries because it's, really got great leadership and it's constantly underestimated. And when I was in Atlanta with Whitecap Construction Supply, we were competing for employee talent with, Home Depot and Coca-Cola and Delta and UPS and all these other big companies. And we competed very effectively and built fantastic teams with incredible people because it was such a great place to work. We had a president who was very employee focused. And I think some of it is a myth, and you need to get a little cocky and have a little swagger about how good your work environment is. And then you got to live up to that.
Right.
And you can't get away with not paying people. You can't say, well, we're distribution, we can't pay. That's not going to fly. But, you got to have a competitive compensation and benefits package. And then you just have to be a better leader. And there's a lot of exciting stuff going on in distribution. So I don't think people should be apologetic. I think they should be proud.
Oh, I agree. I mean, I think it's just one of the greatest opportunities out there. I had a conversation on the show, a couple of years ago, and we just talked about, where else can a 20-something, a young 20-something have this amazing level of accountability and responsibility, for example, branch management, like watching over millions of dollars in inventory and having a staff of could be, upwards of 20 people, and this responsibility for a customer or territory at maybe 23, 24. You don't get that in other sectors. I mean, they aren't going to give you that responsibility.
No.
So no, this is a pretty cool place to play. Just the reason I asked that, it just kind of dawned on me. That's one of the areas that I think there's a lot of opportunity for us, to help distributors do that. And I'm really glad you all are putting that together. I wasn't aware of the value proposition, value experience for candidates. And that's something great. And obviously they can find that at your website, I'm going to say. Okay. All right. Yeah. We'll make sure to link that because I like that area. So
yeah, the employee one actually we just developed. It's an analytics tool, and so it's not on there yet. But they can reach us from our website. We can walk them through it.
Perfect.
So this is why Jonathan has developed all this great software. It's
cool. No, that's fantastic. So let's segue over to the AI side, to what we're kind of hoping to chat about here, and I think it's actually kind of a perfect segue because AI is permeating all these different aspects of distribution. And I think a lot of distributors, including myself as a former distributor, are still trying to figure out where's everything going to land. We're trying to figure out where the puzzle pieces are going to fit in. I think we're all curious, incredibly curious, but don't really know what the direction might be. So let's start with that first conference. A year ago, you all had the Applied AI for Distributors conference, the inaugural event in Chicago. And I guess let's start there. Let's talk about, what happened at that, and what do you feel like were kind of the highlights that were pulled out of that event?
I think people started to see, we started to demystify AI. And, we were still pretty fresh with announcements from ChatGPT, tons of articles online in print about the effect of AI and what's going to happen, a lot of fear and a lot of excitement. And our goal was really to try to shift people from fear towards excitement. They're flip sides of one another, right? And so part of it, I think what people started to see is, there's things where vendors can help me. So I'm a software company. I do this. This is the AI function that it does. Great. Here's what we can start to do with generative AI. And we had content at the conference. We had speakers that were showing what to do with Gen AI. And then here's what I might think about doing in terms of creating an internal capability. So I think the scale of that obviously depends on the size of the company. So like in this year's conference, we've got one of the top or the top AI person from Granger. Is that right, Ian?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Granger's not the average company. They're going to have a more substantial effort than a $10 million distributor.
Sure.
But really starting to think about where an internal capability gets built out. And I think people came away from that excited. We somewhat view distributors as being mostly laggards in terms of technology adoption.
Yeah.
So that means at the right end of that technology adoption curve, right? If you can picture it, people who came to this conference were at the left end of that curve. They were innovators and early adopters. So I think we're definitely going to see more of that in this conference. It's still in the early adoption phase, which means by the numbers, that's what I'm supposed to do, right? 3.5% of the entire distribution world would be innovators and early adopters.
Right.
So,
yeah, I think, it's kind of interesting. I know that, speaking of ChatGPT, that had been announced and people are they didn't know what to do with it and they were just getting enamored with it. And early adopters, that small percentage were trying to figure out, okay, where can this fit? Now, I know that there were some other folks that have played in AI for a longer period of time. A friend of mine, Nelson
Valderrama.
Yeah.
Yeah, we know Nelson.
Yeah. So Nelson, he's played around with this a lot and he talks about, I can just go get more robots to do stuff. I don't have to keep, adding people, but he's been in that business a long time. And so he understands it way better than a lot of us do. But last year, it was, at least for me, it was that all of a sudden I'm now in a sense of awe. What can I do with this? This is a sandbox. What can I build? So I think hopefully that was something that was sparked last year.
Well, and you mentioned sandbox, which has a boundary, right? So part of what we talked about is guardrails. Ian had this brilliant idea for a session. You want to talk about the session you came up with Lynn?
I think it was called How to Use AI to Destroy Everything You've Built or something like that.
Okay.
And she described what could go wrong, right? I mean, it's like, for example, if you just let your employees use ChatGPT in an unrestricted fashion, well, guess what? It absorbs all that data. You're giving confidential data out into the world potentially, right? So those are the guardrails around the sandbox, right? This year we actually have a former White House CIO who's talking cybersecurity in the age of AI.
Oh, interesting.
And that's really, I mean, she's amazing. She wrote a best-selling book, and she actually was on a reality show where they used technology to track people who were trying to get away. It was like an escape game.
Oh, interesting.
In the real world. And then we've got Brian Walker from Granger, as Jonathan mentioned. We've got Zach Cass, who was on the launch team for ChatGPT as their head of go-to-market. We've got a whole panel on what owners and investors expect with Ryan Merkel from William Blair and Alex Mozid from Applico. And we've got a discussion panel of distributors with the head of machine learning and AI for Wesco's on that panel. And so is Tony Ogg, who used to be the CTO for digital at Arrow Electronics. And we've got Emanuela Delgado from Partstown in Chicago.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's this vibrant, exciting environment. And we have like 30 different technology companies who are presenting their wares. And I'm so glad you're going to be there, Jason. You're just going to be a sponge. It's going to be great to meet you in person.
Exactly. Face to face. It'd be fun. Yeah.
And hopefully I won't get COVID the night before again. But
I hope not.
But it's such a fun, vibrant, exciting environment. You just feel like you're standing with a bunch of people who are trying to figure out the future.
Well, I think, one of the things for me, again, last year, early on 2023, as I said, awe, just in awe, and this new exciting thing to work with. And I'm looking forward to interacting with people that are all in that same in awe. We're like these children, looking at this new opportunity and thinking, wow, what can I really do with this? And really allowing your head to go wherever it wants to play. And that's just something I have not seen in my career for a while, so it's been a long time since I got to do that. So that's the fun stuff.
But it was actually shock and awe, to use that expression, right? And again, the trick is to move people from the shock to the
absolutely
awe side of the
well,
equation.
I think, Jonathan, you're absolutely correct. A lot of people are very afraid of the potential for their jobs to be lost. I mean, I think that's just right where it is, or it getting into nefarious hands and, something really bad happening. And so, yes, and there's legitimacy, I guess, in anything, with that fear. But yes, to move them from shock to awe, that's a big lift in many cases.
Yeah, to your point, I think we go full reptilian brain on, what's going to happen to my job.
Right.
And Ian and I have a really healthy dispute around this. It's going to play out over the next number of years. But, to what extent is it really freeing up people to do higher level functions? And to what extent is there going to be layoffs? And that's really the tension in our dialogue. So one of us will be right.
Right. Well, I think, the layoffs occur with people who are unwilling to see the opportunity. That's kind of where my head is going, is that I do believe that we'll come to a point where we will start to allow machines to do what they do best and to really let them do the heavy lifting. I mean, this is my big complaint when people buy distribution software in general, is that they go ahead and buy this thing and they use maybe less than 10% of the capability. They want to do every workaround to make it like it was, the system they had before or whatever it is. Right. And it's like, guys, you paid 100% for this thing. Why are you only using 10? Come on.
Right. Yeah, I think that's right. So, I mean, Jonathan's more optimistic about the impact of AI on jobs than I am. Because there's this saying on LinkedIn that, AI won't take your job. Somebody using AI will take your job. And I think, no, someone using AI is going to take 100 jobs. And so, I mean, I guess we'll see. The history of technology is that in the long run, it creates more jobs and it eliminates. You just have to survive the transition, right? Because you can't just take coal miners and turn them into coders. Right. On the other hand, these things are unpredictable because right now AI is creating more coal mining jobs and keeping coal plants open because the power consumption requirements to train these models and to run them for these data centers means they're not sunsetting these coal plants like they thought. So there's an unanticipated from the land of unexpected results department, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think any of us really know. My concern is AI is like the first technology ever that someday you can speculate can do literally everything better than people. No other technology has had that capability.
Yeah. Ian, I think you and I talked about this in our last episode. Was one thing that's incredibly concerning for me is the fear in the education system around this, especially in the younger education system, like my kids, middle school and high school. Last year, it was really, they were terrified of this because they're saying, well, kids are going to write papers, through ChatGPT or different things. And they're trying to figure out ways to block this. And I was just shaking my head. I'm like, man, why don't you just figure out how to develop a curriculum around responsible use, and what it could use? Because I truly believe that these kids, at least the ones that choose to adopt this, they are going to be using AI in the next 3 years, 3 to 5, maybe, and as they move into the world, if they don't have a respect for and interest in it, they could be part of that casualty there.
Yeah.
And they could be relegated to jobs that don't have potential.
We have a colleague, Macy Dodd, who has a sister who is in college, or a cousin, maybe a cousin who's in college. And the cousin's professor said, yes, use ChatGPT. They were contrarian. They said, embrace it. I think the other perspective on the jobs, part of what we tried to convey was we referenced some work done by McKinsey and others. And McKinsey said those that are early adopters of AI will see 120% growth to, I don't know if it was the balance sheet. It was some important metric, right? Those that are fast followers are 10% growth, and those that are laggards are minus 25% growth. So it may not be that you lose your job because there's AI at your company. It may be that you lose your job because the competitor has gotten so good at deploying AI and creating competitive advantage that they start taking market share, and you have fewer jobs at your company.
Gotcha.
So kind of an indirect thing. I just thought of that.
Yeah. It is interesting. And I think I really appreciate an educator who says, you know what, we've got a new tool. Let's figure out how to use it. Let's not ban it. And I think that's the part that really just, was disappointing. is these folks were putting all their energy into blocking rather than how do we use this? And that's the part that really kind of got me.
I totally agree. My wife just went back to college to finish her long neglected bachelor's degree. And she's taking these, like stats classes, and she's still using this TI-85 graphing calculator.
Yeah.
But my kids used like 15 years ago, and I think they've been around forever, right? And it's like Texas Instruments must have some lobbying with these colleges and universities, because it is the most pointless thing in the world to learn this interface on this ancient computer when they should be using Excel. And, it's like kids that they learn photography and the teacher makes them learn how to shoot on film and develop film. I mean, what an absolute waste of time. I mean, if you want to do that as a hobby, that's fine, but you're not helping these kids learn photography if you're not teaching digital principles. Film photography is dead, except as a hobby.
As an obscure hobby, just because those of us dig on the dark room and the chemicals,
Exactly, right. Yeah. And so, but I completely agree with you. I think that notion of embracing these tools and teaching the kids how to use them, that's a lot more useful than trying to ban them.
So looking at our associates in the companies, I think that's another area that, that really distributors could use help, if you will, that a lot of them say, well, how do I get my associates interested in AI? And again, go away from that shock and move to awe. What do you all think? What would you advise somebody to say, how do I get my associates, and I'm talking entry level or, counter, anywhere in the mix, to try it out, to play in this space a little bit so that it's not as scary when we say the words, AI?
I think all of this stuff has an adoption curve, and there's power users of something that's new in any organization. There's a book called Astroball, which roughly is Moneyball 2.0.
Okay.
And there's a senior player, I think his first name's Carlos, I can't remember his last name, and he's looking at these analytics for motion mechanics on the swing.
Okay.
And there's only one or two guys on the whole Astros team that are ready to focus on it at that point. Well, one of them is a guy named Jose Altuve, who at 5'7" or 5'8" hits way more home runs than any 5'7" or 5'8" guy. It's probably as a result of using these motion mechanics. He also bats better, his batting average is higher. I mean, there's all kinds of metrics that show this was a success story. So I think if you look at an example like that, it's instructive to see that, once they saw that Jose Altuve is successful with this, then other people started doing that. So I think there's a similar thing that happens with all technology, whether it's in a Houston Astros or Major League Baseball or in a distribution company. We're starting to see the same thing right now with CRM.
For sure.
As the powerful analytics come into CRM, whether it's cross-selling or wallet share, and other reps are getting value from it, it does have an adoption curve.
Yeah.
And I would add, just as a very straightforward answer, get everybody to use Microsoft Copilot in their Office applications.
Yeah, somebody mentioned this recently to me, and so I think that's definitely an area I need to go play in.
Yeah, just install it, use it with your emails and your presentations and your Word documents, and people get very comfortable very fast because it's a very familiar work environment.
Got it. Yeah, I think, one of the more simple answers I was given, I was talking about this with a group of operations managers I facilitate, and one of them, he said, I just planned my summer camping trip through ChatGPT. And he said that got him involved in it. And he said, okay, this has worked out pretty good, and he refined the query and everything, got a little bit better and better. But then now he's got a huge appreciation for that tool. I've shared that story a couple of times with people, just saying, hey, look, go with something incredibly personal for that individual.
Yeah.
Not company related. I mean, incredibly, personal,
Sure.
And then let them bring it back into their work environment.
I like it. Yeah. I think, right. Do where you're comfortable and where it's most useful and interesting to you. Right.
Yeah. Frankly, I'm planning my summer vacation with that, as well.
So, really? That's interesting.
I am. My family, we're going to Japan, and I'm like, I want a 10-day itinerary in Japan, and here's where I want to go, and let's see what happens. And so it's been fun. It's fun getting my kids involved in that too.
Right.
That they get to play in that environment as well. So.
Yeah, it's funny. I heard an interview with Eric Schmidt, who used to be the CEO of Google. Yeah. And he said, people talk about AI as though it's an assistant. Well, I'll have an assistant in our pockets. And he goes, but it's really like having an Oracle or a polymath in your pocket. I mean,
Yeah.
Those old cartoons where they'd climb up the Himalayas and there'd be the Oracle sitting there. I mean, that's in your pocket and they can answer anything. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, absolutely unbelievable. So let's talk about this conference coming up. We've talked about a few of the lineup, speaker lineup and things like that. What can people expect to see and what they can expect to feel?
It's just an amazing environment. The people there, the networking's off the charts because you've got all these super curious people who are there for one reason, which is to learn how to use AI to run better distribution companies. And so you get a lot of really hands-on practical insights about software applications that will make your inventory turn faster while raising service levels and improve your demand generation and your customer relationship management and help you run better warehouse. I mean, you name it, do financial settlement faster. So all those insights are really important. And this is like where, hey, I get a little bit here, a little bit here, a little bit here. And suddenly I'm clearly outperforming my competitor, both in terms of satisfying customers and in terms of financial performance. Then you have a few big picture people who are talking about where AI is going in the future, right? They're visionaries. Yeah. And I would say, bring your notebook. And I mean, look, there's 3 different tracks. So we have a lot of companies that will sign up with 3 people and just have them go attend the individual tracks. So you'll see when you're there, Jason, it's just a really high energy, exciting environment.
Oh, that's great. So how can people sign up? Where do they go? I mean, I'll link all this stuff, but I want to hear from you all.
Well, they can go to appliedaifordistributors.com or they can just go to our website, distributionstrategy.com, and there's a banner at the top. Either one of those places. And we've got, group discounts. So we encourage people to sign up early. I mean, there's a chance we're going to sell this thing out. And so, people shouldn't wait too long.
Yeah. And it's, was it June
4th through 6th. And we're actually doing, before the show starts, we're doing a 2.5-hour workshop for professional salespeople on how to use generative AI to get better sales results, more productivity, better responses to your emails and inquiries, territory management. And the guy teaching it, Paul Beyer, has done about 500 of these. And
gotcha.
So you can sign up for that separately. So it's going to be quite an event.
And this is Chicago.
Yep. Chicago Marriott O'Hare.
Okay. So right there at the air. Make it easy on everybody.
Yeah. It's a 5-minute Lyft ride.
That's awesome.
Or Uber ride. And by the way, there's a train stop there. So if you really want to go into the city, you don't even have to drive.
I'm a fan of the Blue Line right there, man. I know
from the parking lot, there's a line downtown.
I know exactly what you're talking about. One of my favorite places. So,
yeah.
All right. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for jumping on this, and chatting a little bit. I look forward to meeting both of you face to face, And Ian, you got to stay healthy for this thing so we can get a face to face out there. So,
thank you so much for having us on the show, Jason. We really appreciate it.
You bet. Well, hopefully we can drum up some more guests there. I'm looking forward to seeing some of my, my audience out there. I got to meet a few of them face to face as well. So,
hey, bring your recording gear.
That's right. I'll do my best to do that. So, all right, Jonathan, thanks again for coming on. Ian, always a pleasure. And
likewise.
Again, I'll see you all, in about a month. So
awesome.
All right.
Looking forward, Jason.
All right. Thank you. Take care, guys.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening. If you liked what you heard, consider sharing with your friends and colleagues. And don't forget to follow the show on your favorite podcast application. Links to sponsors, products, and services mentioned during this episode can be found in the show description area or at www.distributiontalk.com. Distribution Talk is edited and mixed by the brilliant team at the Creative Imposter Studios. This episode was brought to you by my company, The Distribution Team. We are a consulting services firm dedicated to helping wholesale distribution clients remove barriers to profitability, generate wealth, and achieve personal goals. To learn more about how we can help your company succeed, check us out at www.thedistributionteam.com.